and welcome back to all of my wonderful sewhorts. Today we're going to start the crochet along for the Edwardian Tam-o'Shanter. I am super excited and I hope you are all as well. If you want to check out the video with the intro and all of the materials and stuff, that is linked down below in the description or right up here. And this is the tutorial for right-handed crochet. So if you are left-handed, there is a separate set of videos for you, which is linked either right here or again in the description box down below. So check those out. If you are right-handed, stick right here. And there's not much else to say that I haven't covered already, so we're gonna hop right on in and start crocheting. All right, let's get this started. This is crocheted in the round, and we are going to be starting from the top in the center underneath where the pom-pom attaches. Now this stitch does look complicated, but I don't think it is that complicated. Once you get the hang of it, it's really easy. You just need to pay attention to where you're putting your hook as you make all the loops that go into it. So let's go over the stitch itself before we actually start with our tam yarn. So for this, I've done a chain of 12 stitches and then I've single crocheted back 10. So I've got 10 single crochets on my foundation here. So let's get started. Step 1, starting a new row or round, is always going to be chain 3. So we are going to chain 1, 2, and 3. And now we're going to start picking up loops. So we're going to skip that first chain, and then we're going to go in from the front through the second chain, yarn over and pull through, and just hold that on my needle. And I'm going to do the same again with the bottom chain. Now I'm going to go through the back of the chain for this one, just for this starting initial stitch here. It'll be slightly different when we're working in a round. And then I'm going to go through the first single crochet on my foundation, and then I'm going to do the same in the second single crochet on my foundation, which is just yarning over and pulling through. And as you can see, I now have 6 loops on my needle. If you've done Tunisian crochet, you might be more familiar with this method, I should say, of this action. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 6 loops at once. And as you can see, this gives me basically an L-shaped set of loops here. And I've got all 6 are visible. And to secure them in place, I am just going to yarn over and pull through one more time, or make a chain stitch there. So as you can see, I have formed this eyelet, and that is where I'm going to start my next star stitch into. So I'm going to go into the eyelet, and I'm going to go into the last loop of the previous stitch. And you want to make sure you are going through that loop, not the back of the chain stitch you made to close the eyelet. So now I've got 3 loops on my hook. I'm going to go through the same stitch, the second of the 2 single crochet stitches I went through before, and then I'm going to go through 2 more stitches along my foundation line. So again, 6 loops. Then I'm going to yarn over, pull through, yarn over and pull through once more. And this is your basic single star stitch for this entire hat. I'm going to do it a couple more times, just finish out this row. So through the eyelet, through the last standing loop, through the last stitch in the foundation from the previous, and then through 2 more the next 2 stitches in the foundation. Yarn over, pull through all 6 loops, yarn over, and pull through once more. Each star stitch takes up 2 of the foundation stitches to get the full star stitch. And each regular star stitch you will be lifting 6 loops to form it. Sometimes I will pinch the last loop in the row just to make sure that as I am pulling that long loop through, I don't tighten it up too much, which makes it hard to pick up the loop through it when I do the next stitch. So here I am going to do the last stitch in this row. And on my foundation of 10 stitches, I have put in 5 stars. And you can count the stars by counting the eyelets. It's the easiest way to do it because they are distinct within the pattern. Because as you saw when you were looking at my finished Tam-o'Shanter, it can be a little, I don't want to say confusing, but it is a very busy pattern. So finding those eyelets is a really easy way to do it. Now, I am tying off my last stitch here, and I'm going to hop back to my beginning and start in the same spot as before, because when we actually start the tam, we will be working in the round. The way this was written in the Edwardian period, originally it was also written to be done only from one side. There is no return row, which a modern star stitch does have. But anyway, I am going to just loop my thread in and then chain 3 to start another round, or another row I should say. And I'm going to pull a loop from my second chain, a loop from the front of my third chain, and then a loop from the back of my third chain. And then I'm going to once again just do a regular star stitch. Now if you look at the top, once you finished your first row, you can see a series of large and small loops which form the top edge of your work. Now as we work through these, I am only going to be working through the back loop of the larger foundation stitch. So I'm going to go through just the back loop here to pick up my loop, but I'm going to go through the entire eyelet. So as you can see, I have my 6 loops on my needle, or on my hook. I'm just going to pull through all 6 again, and then yarn over and close my eyelet. Now, as you can see, my eyelets from the stitch below to the stitch above do line up, although they will skew slightly. That's normal. That's just how this stitch wants to be. Next, I'm going to do a double stitch, which this is our increase stitch. This is how we will shape the top of the Tam-o'Shanter. So basically it's the exact same thing, except I'm only going to pick up 4 loops as I work down instead of 5. So when I'm finished, I'm only going to have 5 loops on my hook when I yarn over and pull through all of them. So what this is I am only stitching into one of the 2 foundation stitches below. So to make the second half of this, I'm going to do the exact same thing as I did before. But once again, I'm only going to pick up 4 for a total of 5 loops, including my starting loop, before I yarn over, pull through, and then close my eyelet. And honestly, you can't, once you get into the project, you're not going to be able to look at it and really tell which star has 5 loops and which star has 6. But this gives me 2 star stitches in the current row on top of 1 star stitch in the row below. So that is giving me my increase. So once again, I picked up only 5 stitches, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Now these stitches are always done in pairs because this stitch is done over a base of 2. So you either have a single stitch which takes up both of your 2 foundation stitches, or you have a double star which each half of the star takes up half of your foundation stitches, or 1. So I have done half of my once again, through the eyelet, through the last loop, through the last stitch from the previous one. I put my stitch in the wrong spot, that's my fault. Through the last loop, through the previous foundation stitch, then through 1 foundation stitch, and for this one I'm going to make it a full stitch, so then I'm going to go through the eyelet of the stitch below as well. So again, I've got 6 loops. I am making a single stitch. I'm going to pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over. And 1 more single stitch where I am lifting and putting 6 loops on my hook before I yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So I have 5 stitches in my first row of star stitches, and then in my second row I've got 7 star stitches, 4 of which are, I should say 2 of which are double stitches, so they've got 4 eyelets in them versus the ones below which have 1 eyelet. And also, as I mentioned before, it does skew slightly, so we are actually going to get sort of a spiral going on as we start crocheting in the round, but I think it adds to the charm of the pattern, and it's not wrong that it does this. So let's hop on over into the actual tam now. Alright, we are going to start the tam with a magic loop, which I will link a tutorial to, but basically it's just a slip knot that you haven't pulled the knot part tight yet on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to chain 2 from that first little tiny loop I got, and I'm putting a marker in so I can see which is my correct second chain for when I join later. But what I'm going to do is into the loop I am just going to single crochet 7 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So now that I've done my single crochets, I'm just going to pull the tail to tighten up that loop, and I'm going to slip stitch into where I left my marker. And I'm going to start with a round of 4 double stars. So I'm going to chain 3, put my marker. Again, I like having that marker there. You might not. I like it because it makes it easier for me to tell which stitch to slip into. So I'm going to go start the first half of my double star. So I'm going to go into the second chain, the third chain, the back of my last chain, and then one of my foundation single crochets. yarn over, pull through all, yarn over, pull through to close the eyelet. And then we're going to go eyelet, back of the last loop, the same foundation stitch as the previous stitch, and then one more foundation stitch. Yarn over, pull through all 5 loops, and then yarn over and pull through one again. So I'm just going to continue doing this the whole way around. As I said, it is 4 double star stitches, so I'm going to end up with 8 eyelets in my stars once I am done with this round. For the foundation row and the foundation row alone, going into those single crochets, I am going through both loops of the stitch. But as I mentioned earlier, when I'm working over existing star stitches, I only go through the back loop when I am crocheting those. This first row can be a little tight. That's not uncommon. It depends on what kind of tension you use yourself. And to an extent, the size of your hook versus the size of your yarn. I am using a 4mm hook for this one, which is actually a little bigger than what the yarn recommends, but I found it easier to work with a slightly larger hook with a stitch this dense. So I have done 7 half doubles, shall we say. This is the second half of my 4th double star stitch. So I'm once again through the eyelet, through the last loop of the stitch below, the same foundation stitch as the stitch below, and then my last single crochet there. And for this one, this is the only time I'm going to change. I have done my yarn over and pull through all of my stitches, but I am not going to do the yarn over and pull through the eyelet exactly the same. I'm going to include the slip stitch to join the round in forming this eyelet, because it means it will not leave a gap that way. So I'm going to start my second round now, and this is going to be 8 double star stitches. So I am just completely doubling the number of stitches in my second round here. So we've got through the second chain, the third chain. Now, one thing that you might find easier to do, rather than going through the back of that third chain, you can also go through the loop of that slip stitch. So once again, I'm going to do that and then go through my first. Instead of going through both loops here, I am only going to go through the back loop of that foundation. I'm calling it the foundation. It is the first loop of the star stitch below. Then yarn over, pull through all, yarn over and form the eyelet. And that is the first half of a double stitch, and then we're just going to do the second half of a double stitch again. So through the eyelet, through the last loop of the previous stitch, through the same foundation as the stitch before. I forgot. I am adding a marker as I start this because I want to keep all of my increases lined up as I continue on. So that's why I've just put a marker on this stitch. It'll make sense when we get to the next round, to round 3. So I'm just going to continue going around here, doing all doubles and putting a marker in every other stitch. I should say putting a marker in every other half of my double stitch. So I'm going to end up with 8 markers when I am done with this round. The reason why I put it in the middle of my first double stitch is because I do not want to start each round with a double stitch as I get further along. I want to start each round with a single stitch. I forgot to put one in, so it's just a matter of looping it back into the large loop that forms the top of one of my previous sets of stars. Once again, I'm at the end where I'm joining my round, and instead of making the eyelet by itself, I am slipping to join while I create the eyelet. So that is the end of my second round, and I've got 8 of my markers in there, as you can see. And as I said, these are just going to tell me where I want to do double stitches versus single stitches, and that matters starting in this row, because my first row I'm going to do a single star stitch, which means I am going to have 6 loops on my hook before I do my yarn over pull through all. So it's been a while since we did that, so let's just go over it really quickly. I'm going to go through the front of my second chain, yarn over and pull through my third chain, and then I am going to use that loop for my slip stitch, and then I'm going to go through. The only problem with my stitch markers is they tend to wiggle around. The back loop, and then I am going to go through the eyelet of the star stitch below. So I have 6 loops on my hook, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 6 without stitching my stitch marker into this. And now I have come to one of my increased stitch markers, so I am going to do a double star stitch next. My very first step though is going to be to move my stitch marker up to my current working row, so that when I do the next row I know where to put it. I personally find just marking where all of my increases go makes things easier, because then I don't need to constantly pay attention and count stitches. So I am only going to put 5 loops on my hook this time before I yarn over and pull through all, and I'm going to do that twice for my double star stitch here, or my increasing star stitch. So 5 loops, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and then I'm going to do a single star stitch, which is going to be a 6 loop star stitch. And I've reached another stitch marker, so I am going to do a double star stitch now. And this is the basic pattern for the top of the tam. I'm just going to continue each row. The number of single star stitches I do in between my double star stitches is going to increase each time by 1. And I'm just going to continue along this row here, which is row 3, and I am alternating single and double star stitches as I go. I am only counting my star stitch rows as rows. That first round with single crochets that we did to start with, that is foundation, so I'm not counting that as a row. And this is the basic pattern for the entire top of the hat. Every row I will do another single stitch in between my double stitches, my double star stitches, so that Row 4 will be 2 single stars plus 1 double star. Row 5 will be 3 plus a double star, etc., until I get to row 10. So I am almost finished with my 10th round here. I've got a little bit further to go, so I'm just going to keep doing this. This row is 8 single star stitches and 1 double star stitch. Just going to do my last slip stitch here to join row 10 together, round 10 I should say, and that is where we are going to stop for this video. And I'm going to use my last stitch marker to make sure I don't accidentally pull out all of that crocheting I've done. And there we go. This is almost all of the top of the Tam-o'Shanter. And you can sort of see that spiral that has formed where my increases are, the double star stitches. It's faint, but with the dark background it's a little bit easier to see. As you can see, we're not quite at the full width, but we're gonna get to that in the next video. We'll finish that. No, I should say we'll finish the top and keep working as we go. Alright, that is our stopping point for today. So feel free to rewind, pause, rewatch this video as often as you need. If you have any questions, you can either contact me here in my comments down below or message me over on Instagram. And I will put out the next video in this series in 2 weeks, which is November 3rd, which we will continue working on the tam, of course. And then there will be a third video after that for the last bit of crocheting and finishing up and styling it and everything. And that'll be another 2 weeks after that. If you enjoyed this, please like it, leave a comment, all that kind of fun stuff for engagement here. If you want, you are welcome to hop over to my Ko-fi, which is linked down below, and leave me a little something. Oh, excuse me. And I will see you in 2 weeks with the next part of the tam. I can't wait to do it, and I hope you guys are excited as well. And also, like always, if you are crocheting along, send me photos on Instagram. Please either message me or tag me so I can see them. I want to see what you guys are doing with this too, because that's the fun part. It's not me doing this, it's seeing what you guys do with it. So yeah, I will see you again in 2 weeks with more Tam-o'Shanter. Bye!